It has just been reported that the deputy, who many feared had come down with Ebola yesterday, is taken in sick. Someone who had visited the apartment of Mr. Duncan, the Ebola patient in Dallas. Tests have come back negative for him. CNN reports that tests of a specimen from Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital, Dallas, where he was treated, were negative for the deadly virus, the Texas Department of State Health Services said. And of course, he was very concerned, as we all were, with the mixed messages that were sent out. They quarantined his patrol car. They took the clothing that he had and quarantined that and let him go. And he said, "What about me?" That's the kind of mixed messages that we've been seeing. What we saw there as they went into that apartment, of course, it was days after the patient had been removed from the apartment he had been staying in, and perhaps, hopefully, it was no longer contagious. Yet, rather than saying that to the public, they gave the impression that it wasn't any problem to go into an apartment. It wasn't any problem to leave the vomit on the sidewalk for many days. That is not the case. And we're seeing the fruit of that, of course, in this case in Spain. The BBC was told by one of the scientists who discovered Ebola back in 1976, he said, much more must be done to stop the spread of this virus. He said he never imagined that an Ebola outbreak, quote, could have gotten to this point. And The Guardian has reported that the Spanish Ebola patient's condition is much worse, and now up to 7 people, actually 7 people have been quarantined. They say 4 more people have been put in quarantine in the past day. Said 80 are under observation, including 2 employees at the hair salon where she went for an appointment a week and a half ago. Now, as I reported earlier, she made not 1 trip to the hospital to get turned away, but 3 trips. And unlike Mr. Duncan, her treatment was delayed not for 2 days, but for an entire week. And when they finally diagnosed her as having Ebola, they left her for 8 hours in the emergency room in close proximity to workers as well as to patients. Now, the doctor who finally treated her said the patient was suffering from diarrhea, vomiting, and coughing, and his protective equipment, he said, was ill-fitting at times. The sleeves were too short. He said, leaving his skin exposed, that is a fatal mistake there. Despite being on the front line of treating the nurse, he was not updated when her test results proved positive. He said, I learned of the results from journalists rather than from the relevant authority. So he never was told by the hospital. He only learned of it in the media. Then they also talk about the ambulance. Again, mirroring the kinds of missteps that we saw in Dallas. He said the ambulance that initially brought her from home to the hospital carried 7 other patients after her before it was sterilized. Well, Spain is not just having a hard time controlling the outbreak and spread of Ebola, they're also having a hard time containing the independence movement in Catalonia. But it looks like they've come up with a nuclear option, something that is guaranteed to turn the vote back. They have maintained that the Catalonians, despite having a separate culture, a separate language, and wanting to break away from Spain, there's a very popular independence movement there. They've said they will not be allowed to have a vote, or they will not recognize it unless Spain calls the election. And Spain wants all of Spain, not just the people who want independence, to have a vote. That'd be like saying in the UK that not just Scotland would get the vote, but England and Wales and Northern Ireland would get the vote as well. But now they have come up, I think, with something that is going to swing it in the favor of not going to independence. Catlan clubs are now facing La Liga acts if the region secedes, reports the USA Today. In other words, the football clubs, or as we would call them in the United States, the soccer clubs in Barcelona and Espanyol, would not be allowed to play in the Spanish league. That would be like if we had in the United States a Texas secession movement, a Texas independence movement, and they came back and said, if you vote to secede from the United States, you won't be allowed to have the Cowboys play in the NFL. I think that's their ace in the hole. I think they're going to be able to stop it with that. But it's not just the election in Catalonia that's coming up, of course. The American election is just a couple of weeks away. And we see that the Democrats are running as fast as they can, not just from Obama, but also from Harry Reid. Democratic Senate candidates are running away from Harry Reid, reports the Daily Caller. And they're saying that Arkansas Senator Mark Pryor, who's one of the most vulnerable Democrats running this year, told donors during a closed-door event that he would like to see Harry Reid replaced as a leader. And in Kansas, we see Greg Orman as an independent candidate that's supported mostly by Democrats. He said, the Senate is being run poorly. Harry Reid is running it like a dictatorship. And of course, it's not just Obama and Harry Reid. It's also Nancy Pelosi that they're running from. This story that's up on Infowars.com from BizPac Review says flailing Democrats in tough House races are attacking Nancy Pelosi in their own campaign ads. They have career politicians like Dub Lamborn and Nancy Pelosi have failed, says a Democrat named Halter, who is running in Colorado. He says there's only one way to change Washington: vote them out. That's a Democrat ad saying, vote out Nancy Pelosi. And of course, Republicans call them on this hypocrisy. They say these Democrats are complete hypocrites. They say unless they're willing to give up the millions in outside spending that Nancy Pelosi is dumping into their races, then the ads are a complete lie. And of course, they want to distance themselves from the people who are clearly understood along with their policies. They want to pretend that they don't have anything to do with these people or their policies, and yet they will continue those policies, as unfortunately will the GOP for the most part. Now, there is an interesting proposition coming up. There's going to be a lot of interesting propositions on things like legalizing medical marijuana in many different states, but we've also got one that's a little bit different in Arizona. Prop 122 is pushing back against federal overreach. This is a story from the New American, and this is what the title of the Proposition 122 says. It says, the state will exercise its sovereign authority by restricting state and local government personnel and financial resources to purposes that are consistent with the Constitution of the United States. They say a yes vote will have the effect of allowing the state to restrict the state and all local governments from using any personnel or financial resources to enforce, administer, or cooperate with a federal action or program that is not consistent with the Constitution of the United States. He says this proposed amendment to the state constitution, known as Proposition 122, is at once the most important and the most irrelevant question to be decided by the citizens of the Grand Canyon state. Now, he says, of course, to resist the federal trampling of the Constitution is a right of state lawmakers. So it is very important, but they already have that power. It's called the nullification power. I think it's very important that the federal government has become so obviously criminal in ignoring the Constitution and violating the Constitution that you would see things like this on the ballot. And he's right to point out in this article that it is the most important and at the same time irrelevant thing that will be on the ballot in Arizona. Nullification has been established. It was established back at the time of Jefferson and Madison. And we know that everyone, including state officials, swear an oath to the Constitution. That is the supreme law of the land. They are merely stewards. The Constitution is the king in America. And if they don't support it, they don't have any legal authority for anything that they do. You know, we also have an epidemic in this country of government violence, and that's tied to the war on drugs and SWAT teams. Look at this latest news story here. No indictment for the Georgia SWAT team that burned the baby with a stun grenade. And probably you remember this. This was a SWAT raid into an apartment. They threw a incendiary grenade into a baby's crib, severely burned that child. The child is not dead, but is severely permanently injured. Yet a grand jury has declined to return an indictment. It looks like they're going to take a look at this, however, from the federal perspective. And they should take a look at it, of course, from a lawsuit perspective. Taking a civil lawsuit, we see that in a case in Denver, a warrantless raid on the wrong people there cost Denver cops $1.8 million. Of course, it didn't cost the cops that at all. It's going to cost the taxpayers that much money, and that's unfortunately what always happens. We see that the taxpayers, who are also the ones who are being attacked by this militarized, out-of-control war on drugs, are also the ones who pay for the misdeeds. It never comes out of the budget of the police, and the individuals who are actually doing it are not held individually responsible. In this particular case in Denver in 2009, cops broke down the door of a house that was used as a drug den and a brothel. Not having kept their information current, the cops didn't know that the house was now occupied by someone else. And of course, as a SWAT team raid and as a war on drugs raid, we've seen this happening all the time. They don't bother to get a warrant. They don't have an application for a warrant. They don't have a specific thing that they're looking for. If they had followed the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, they would have had the details to know that that fellow is no longer there. As a family attorney later described the scene, the officers rushed inside, roughed up the residents, including shoving a 16-year-old boy's head through a window and dealing out a generous dollop of beatings and body slammings. The officers rushed inside, roughed everybody up, including shoving a 16-year-old boy's head through a window. Now, to cover themselves, they trumped up a bunch of nonsense charges, as we have seen happen over and over again. But essentially, the war on drugs itself is a bunch of trumped up charges against the American people. And just like we need to see state legislators stand up for the Constitution against federal overreach, we especially need to see that in the war on drugs. Well, that's it for tonight's news. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the Alex Jones channel. And if you're watching it on YouTube, please consider supporting our operation with a subscription to Prison Planet TV. Your paid subscription supports our operation, and it allows you to share it with up to 11 other people at the same time, so you all get the news the night that it happens. Well, join us again tomorrow night at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water.
I can taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does. Ugh.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
Yeah, it has that processed flavor to it.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your ProPure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. Members can share their passcodes with up to 11 other people, and your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.